don't make perfection the enemy of done, right? If we all, a lot of us as attorneys are perfectionists, but if we spend years and years and years building an automation for one document and never actually get there, that's not actually going to help anyone, right? So make sure that you get the things that you need to get done first, and then add all the bells and whistles later.
When's the last time you looked at your website's privacy policy? Do you even have one? Are you automating tedious tasks like this? Our guest this week is Donata Stroink-Skillrud, founder of Termageddon, a company that automates the creation of privacy policies, terms of service, and more. Termageddon then keeps these policies updated automatically on your site as your website and regulations change. We'll talk about how Termageddon can help you cover your bases legally speaking, and why you, as a firm owner of any size, should even care. More broadly, we have a great conversation about how attorneys should be using technology to automate and create iterative processes for their practices. We want to automate the least valuable and most annoying work, but also as a safety net to ensure high-level service and ensure that our firm's standards are consistently met. Let's start the show. I'm John Strohmeyer, and this is the 5-Star Counsel Podcast. The market for legal services is shifting, and lawyers who don't adapt will be left behind. This podcast gives you a competitive edge in today's market by sharing in the client service lessons you probably didn't learn in law school or in law practice. Let's start the show. Hey 5-Star listeners, before we start, I want to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a virtual receptionist service for small businesses with a specialty in working with solo and small law firms. I signed up with them within weeks of starting my firm because they are affordable for even the smallest solo practice. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in Spanish or English, screen and schedule new leads, and can even take payments. And now they're answering calls 24 hours a day. So even when you're asleep, they're still working. Even beyond the phone, they've got live agents and chatbots ready to capture leads on your website, by text, and by Facebook Messenger. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front line so you can work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $70 a month for calls and $100 a month for chats. Smith AI is offering a free trial, and our podcast listeners get an extra $100 discount code with promo code 5-STAR. That's FIVESTAR. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Hey, Donata, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
So, Donata, we're bringing you on. You founded Termageddon a while ago, and that was one of the prompts, but really it's thinking about when we as law firm owners are building out our firms, we want to make sure that we're delivering on a consistent basis. And at a certain point, that means we're going to have to build in automations, and we're going to have to trust not only the humans to do the right things, but we also have to trust the machines to do the right things and not go so far ahead of us that they're going to create problems. So with that in mind, where do we even begin when we're starting to watch for these pitfalls in automation?
Absolutely. I think a lot of attorneys are leveraging new technologies now to help them create more efficiency in their law firms, right? Save themselves time, save their clients billable hours, and just generally improve their processes. And I think the best way to start, at least in my opinion, is to look through your day, right? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis that you could potentially automate or create processes for, whether it's initially onboarding clients, so like interviewing clients, sending engagement letters, talking to them on the phone, or looking through what kinds of documents do you create for your clients? What kind of cases do you usually work on, and what documents could be automated within those cases and within your work? So I really think that the best thing to do to start is look through your day or look through your week and see which items that you do for your clients or for your firm can be automated and made more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I found for myself in the, things to automate, because again, we're doing things all day long, but it's really looking for what's the least valuable and possibly the most annoying task. Granted, as law firm owners, parts of what we do are annoying and difficult, but that's why we get paid for them. So those may not be the things. Just in thinking through what you've been working on, where did you start? What was one of the first things that you found was useful to get off your plate?
Yeah, so I was in private practice at the time, and one of the things that I found that was extremely annoying, and I think a lot of attorneys here will sympathize with this, is sending engagement letters and getting those engagement letters signed by your clients, right? So I think one of the things that you talk about in your podcast is what would a law firm that's run by Jeff Bezos look like? And one of those things that I've noticed, so I read The Everything Store recently about Amazon. And one of the things that I notice is that they take the client first, or they say that they take the customer first and what the customer wants. And one of the things that I found in my law practice that my clients wanted was to understand what work is being done and how much they're being charged for that work, right? That's one of the main tenets of engaging with your client and preventing disputes or malpractice claims in the future is letting your clients know exactly what you're going to do and how much it's going to cost and what the terms of that are. And writing engagement letters is pretty annoying, right? Like you have to plug in the same information and all of that and send it to your client and hope that they can print it out, sign it, scan it, and return it back to you, which is usually a very tedious process. And it's a process that your attorney time could be used in better ways. So having a templated engagement letter where you can write down, the specifics for that particular client, but the rest of it is pretty templated. Using a service like DocuSign so that your clients can sign it online without having to print and sign it and scan it and return it back to you. Really, I think that's one of the first things that law firms should consider doing, because it is such a time consuming process, but it's not a process that attorneys enjoy, and it's not a process that you should spend too much of your time on.
Right. And I mean, the things that I'm picking up and want to kind of call out, it wasn't here we bought one thing and presto changeo, engagement letters were automated. You had at least a few things going on there. Yes, there was a piece of technology in using Documate or Adobe Sign or Hello Sign or whoever it is to get the follow up, but also building out your template and committing to a certain way of doing things.
Mhm.
So it's the new tool there really isn't much of anything. It's we're going to open up Word and we're going to build out a Word document. And as long, if we're doing the same sort of representations, whether it's within the family law practice or criminal defense, whatever, estate planning and probate for me, the engagement letters should have the same provisions over and over. And really, you're only changing a few things based on how you're going to be interacting with that client. What the fees are going to be, any of the relevant information, related parties, things like that.
Exactly, exactly. And it's something that can be done in one afternoon, right? And it's something that can save you hours in the long run.
Right. I mean, one of the other things that I found that was useful is, as I got engagement letters off my plate and onto other people, the plate of others who work for me, figuring out how do I communicate what needs to go in that engagement letter, as well as what questions did they have so that they weren't coming back and asking for it? How can I convey that information? And it's something that I ended up building out in Text Expander, because once we had all the information, once we had all the questions, it's then here it's drop down menus every time in one Text Expander snippet, and we've got it there to
Exactly.
go.
Exactly. And I think you bring up a really great point with automation is that you have to constantly improve it. So whenever you set up some type of automation, you should look for client feedback, or any issues that come up throughout your engagement and say, this is how this particular template could be improved, to include the concerns of clients. So I think one pitfall that people get into when it comes to automation is they think that once the automation is set up, that's it, you're done forever. You don't have to look at it ever again. But that's not true. You have to still test the logic behind the automation to ensure that it continues working. Because a lot of times when different software that you use is updated, the automation tends to break, or it's sent to the wrong people people, things like that. So you have to consistently test it. And then you have to make sure that you consistently improve on that automation as well. So if new issues come up, new questions come up, you shouldn't be shy of reviewing that automation again and seeing how it could be improved.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think the Japanese concept of kaizen of look, we're always looking for making those little improvements here and there, and it may just be a phrase or two. I mean, I think just outside of automation, I mean, or I guess it is an automation because it's a template. We sent draft wills to our clients and they sent it on to their other advisors. The other advisors read through it and had a few comments where I took a look at it and it's like, oh, these are actually some good comments, and we're making some minor tweaks to what we're doing, and that's great. It's great to tighten up what we're doing. We're going to make it better for everybody going forward, and there were just some minor word choices just to clarify things, but it's there for it. It's not set forever. It's a growing document that in a few years, who knows what legal changes will happen, and we'll make some modifications, but we will have built in some better things for it so that the people who work with us tomorrow hopefully are getting a better product than the folks who were working with us last year.
Exactly. And that's a really cool thing about automations as well, is once you set up an automation and then you change it to improve it, that goes to all of your future clients. So instead of just that one particular client benefiting from that document being better, all future clients benefit from that document being better as well. And that's what I think is really cool about automations, is the fact that it can be applied to many different clients instead of just one.
Right, and it makes makes the job easier. And so when we start thinking about that, I mean, I think it's worth kind of getting into what you do with Termageddon. So why don't you just start with a little background for those who aren't familiar with it?
Exactly. Yeah. So when I was in private practice, I was writing privacy policies and terms of service for my clients. And one of the things that I noticed is that I was asking them very similar questions, like what data do you collect, who you share it with, how do you use it, things like that. And I noticed that I had a few different templates that I would Frankenstein together to create what my clients needed. And my thought was, hey, this should be automated. So that's what Termageddon does, is we automate the process of creating website policies, like privacy policies and terms of service for our clients.
And how does it work at this point? I mean, there are places, websites are everywhere. How do you know who needs what?
Yeah, so really any website that collects any kind of personal information like names, emails, and phone numbers need to have privacy policies that contain the disclosures required by the laws that apply to that client. So what we do is we ask them a series of questions. So the first set of questions helps determine what privacy laws apply to them, and therefore what disclosures their privacy policy needs to contain. And the remainder of the questions are around those disclosures. And then the answers are used to create policies that are customized for that particular client's privacy and business practices.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, most websites, most lawyers are listening to this right now and saying, whatever, why would anybody care? So why should we care about terms of service on a small lawyer website?
Yeah, because there are certain privacy laws for the privacy policy itself that require websites to have a privacy policy, and there are heavy fines for failure to comply with those laws that compound per violation, meaning per website visitor whose rights were infringed upon. And then terms of service is basically a contract that helps explain the rules of using the website. So it can help limit the liability for third party links, copyright infringements, things like that, and really help protect the business and limit its liability.
Got it. So, I mean, are there any recent things that people would have heard about in terms of downside bad results from not having this in place?
Oh man, yeah, there's a lot. So there's been dozens of fines being issued to businesses for failure to have a compliant privacy policy. And there's a lot of new privacy laws coming out. So next year we'll have new privacy laws in Utah, Colorado, Virginia, and Quebec, as well as California's privacy law is changing. So there's more and more of these fines being issued for failure to comply with these laws and for failure to have compliant privacy policies as well. So it's definitely something that is at the forefront. I think right now we have over a dozen proposed privacy bills in the US right now as well, all of which would require certain websites to have a privacy policy.
Yeah, and so, I mean, just kind of thinking through this, is there a common misunderstanding that lawyers have about the importance not only for themselves or but also their clients?
I think a lot of lawyers assume that small businesses don't need to comply with these privacy laws. So they assume that, if I have a client who's a one-person business or a two-person business, or they're not making a ton of money, that they don't need to worry about this. And unfortunately, that's really not the case. Most privacy laws will apply to the business regardless of its size. So regardless of its revenue or regardless of its employee count. One thing that I would really recommend for attorneys who are interested in this is to look at the American Bar Association's e-privacy committee or to look at the International Association of Privacy Professionals. Both of these organizations provide really, really good resources to learn more about privacy and privacy issues that your clients may be subject to.
Good. So, I mean, just in thinking about this, where should listeners, we're thinking about protecting the business. Where's a good first step to get started?
In terms of the website policies or just generally?
Um, thinking about website policy is one, but also kind of getting back to automation once you've wrapped that.
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning more about policies, I would definitely recommend checking out the IAPP, IAPP.org, or the American Bar Association's e-privacy committee. There's a lot of resources that we provide there for attorneys that want to learn more about privacy. In terms of automations and looking at that, what I would really recommend is just starting to look at your day and starting to look at the documents that you provide to your clients and then seeing online to see if there are any services that can automate the drafting of those particular documents.
Yeah, I mean, have you had any? I mean, we all stumble when we start automating things. What sort of pitfalls do you, looking back, wish you would have avoided and want to warn others against as they start to automate?
You have to think through every single possibility when you're automating, which can be really, really difficult because there are so many different possibilities out there for what can happen when it comes to certain automations or different documents. What I would do is I would compile a list of the different situations that your clients get into and the different options that they could potentially choose for their agreements. One thing that I really like is going through, I use LexisNexis, but people can use Westlaw, things like that. So those types of services and searching for that particular clause and searching for lawsuits for that particular clause, right? So there are certain lawsuits that talk about how documents are drafted. So if you draft it incorrectly, it usually ends up as a case. So looking through previous cases in your jurisdiction about a particular clause in a contract that you're trying to automate is always very, very helpful because you can learn what courts have said is the wrong way to word things or the wrong way to create certain types of documents. I found that very helpful. But really, you have to look through every type of possibility and every type of situation that might happen and adjust your processes or your automations accordingly.
Got it. So, Donato, what's something you're excited about right now that you're working on?
Well, one thing that I'm very, very excited about that I'm working on, and it's been a huge project for me, is creating a disclaimer generator for attorneys. So I've actually took the time to look through the ethical rules of every single state and all the countries that we service for what attorney website disclaimer should say about attorney advertising on the website. So it's been a really, really big project of looking through each state's ethical rules, each country's ethical rules, and then combining all of those together to see what a disclaimer should look like if an attorney is licensed in one state, multiple states, all states, multiple countries. So that's been a really, really interesting project for me, and I'm very excited for it to launch.
Oh, interesting. What's the timeline for that?
I'm not sure. So because we keep policies up to date with laws, we have to make changes for Utah, Colorado, Virginia, Quebec, and California in the next year. So I'm hoping that the disclaimer generator comes after those updates have been made. It's interesting because, as some of you will find with automation, sometimes you have to push certain things forward and wait on your favorite projects to launch, right? Because you have to make sure everything's in compliance first, and then all the bells and whistles come later, unfortunately. But I'm hoping that not many more states will pass privacy laws this year so that we can focus on the fun stuff too.
Yeah, just thinking about the concept of the minimum viable product, getting that one thing that works enough to go build more things later.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's one of those things like, don't make perfection the enemy of done, right? If we all, a lot of us as attorneys are perfectionists, but if we spend years and years and years building an automation for one document and never actually get there, that's not actually going to help anyone, right? So make sure that you get the things that you need to get done first, and then add all the bells and whistles later.
Excellent. Donata, for listeners who are looking to follow up with you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, just under my name, Donata Stroink-Skillrud. And you can find my company there as well at Termageddon.
Excellent. Donata, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is really fun.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcouncil.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcouncil.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.